And once again, I'd like to welcome everybody back to the Buffalo History Channel for another episode of the Soul of Buffalo TV, the series. And this, I have to say, this has become one of my favorite pieces to do on the Buffalo History Channel, mainly because I'm from the television industry, starting out in TV back in 1994. And it's my way of just being my interest in, documentary history of Buffalo productions like that. It's
do a good job at it.
Exactly. And just continuing it on and just bridging a passion of mine with my profession. And I'm definitely glad to do it.
And your cultural responsibility. How does that sound?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it is my pleasure to have this gentleman here, a part of the Buffalo History Channel. We did give him a mention in the mini documentary that we did on the Soul of Buffalo TV. If you remember back in the day, this gentleman was on Channel 2, one of the black faces we saw on Channel 2 and that we all enjoyed and appreciated in our community. It's my pleasure to welcome the one and only Darryl Dennard to the Buffalo History Channel. Welcome, Darryl.
Well, thank you so much, Doug. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I was hooked up to you through another media legend, Larry Frazier. And
Larry was distinct. He is a very close friend of mine and a true mentor.
Absolutely.
He and Willie Walker helping me to get my start in television. I started actually behind the scenes at Channel 2.
Okay, so let's start. I always like to start from the beginning. When did you know that you wanted to be in the television business?
Well, I think TV, I always knew I wanted to be a journalist. I was in this third grade accelerated reading course at PS 59 in the Bronx, New York. And so we had to read the New York Times every day.
Yes.
And I said, wow, these are fantastic stories that are being told. I would love to be able to tell stories like that. Henceforth, at the same time, the advent of local television news was exploding, and we had Eyewitness News in New York and famous people that were many times imitated on Saturday Night Live, whether it be Roseanne Scamardella and Geraldo Rivera and Gil Noble. And I said, man, I think I like TV better than I like in terms of being a writing journalist, in terms of print journalist. And so went to school at DeWitt Clinton High School, majored, did pretty well academically. I was both in the college bound as well as upward bound program at Fordham University and got accepted to a number of schools. And when I looked at the cost factor and the benefits, Buffalo State at that time, which is now Buffalo State University, was extremely highly rated. It was one of the best colleges in the country. And I knew I was going to go there, and it wasn't really going to cost me much, nor be a burden on my family. And because they had the SEEK program, I also had additional support. So I made the choice to come to Buffalo, New York, and that started me on the trajectory of broadcasting. Majored in what was back then speech and theater arts, and then it became communications, and got my Bachelor of Arts degree in communications from Buffalo State College, now State University. And in fact, in 2022, I believe it was, they bestowed upon me an honorary doctorate in liberal arts. So
yeah, I did see that. I saw a Facebook post about that last year. And so while you were doing your studies at Buff State, were you? Because I didn't go to Buff State. I didn't go to college in Buffalo. I basically went. You came from New York, came into Buffalo. I went. They always had this thing where we go in the opposite directions. I'm from Buffalo. Right. I went out there to Long Island, New York, and went.
Okay, where did you go?
I went to a New York Institute of Technology, or New York Tech.
Yeah.
Yep. So I was in it was in Long Island. So I lived in Central Islip, Long Island. They had a campus there,
far out on the island there.
Yep. And I took courses at Old Westbury, at the Old Westbury campus.
Very good. Well, SUNY's a fantastic system, the largest
Yes.
college system in the
Yeah.
country, and I thank them for the wonderful education that I received, plus also the opportunity to foster relationships with some of the best friends that I currently have.
Yeah. So what were taking some of the classes like at type of a curriculum did they give you back at Buff State?
It was a very robust curriculum, and a lot of it also because of the SEEK program. There
Mhm.
was a great emphasis on identity with regard to our Black identity. So I remember taking a course with that really enlightened me to the power of communication. And it was a philosophy, I believe it was philosophy or psychology or sociology course. And it was taught by preeminent language scholar, Dr. Stephen Baskerville.
Okay.
And he taught a course called Communications of Minority Populations and Dialects,
Mhm.
i.e., Black English. And I learned in terms of what people now, I don't believe it in terms of being called Ebonics, it's just Black English. And
Right.
it's the reality that we have where we pluralize words like feats and words that are singular but
Mm.
plural by their very acceptance or nature. We tend to add s, like I took tesses instead of
Yeah.
saying tests.
Hmm.
And that was enlightening for me. A recent colleague that was also instrumental, who just passed away, and was Buffalo legend, Dr. Phyllis Sloss and Dr. Monroe Fordham.
Yes, yes.
Wanza, just Molifa Santi. I've had all of these professors feed into me during college. In addition to that, Robert Shields, who was the chair of the communications department, and it was called Speech and Theater Arts. He taught me the necessity of trying to rid myself of my New York accent. And,
Mhm.
for those that listen closely, they can hear a little of it, but by and large, I try to eliminate that because that was the norm. Everybody is subscribed to a Midwestern dialect in terms of moving up the ranks uh, with regard to broadcasting.
Okay.
And so those in that and spent a lot of time playing intramural football and intramural basketball
Yeah.
and did everything. Also was on the radio station,
Yeah.
had my own radio show called Shades of Jazz with
Okay.
Darryl Dennard at WSCB. We were just a courier current station at the time.
Right. Right.
And that means you had to plug it into the wall and you would get the signal via the antenna that the electricity outlet provided.
Hmm.
And then we also became a FM station. During my tenure there, me along with Robin Fine and several other of my radio colleagues was able to get Buffalo State, WSCB, Buffalo State of Mind, on the airways.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so most of us will know you for being on Channel 2. Can you talk to us about how you went from Buff State to Channel 2?
Well, I did my internship at Channel 2,
Okay.
and I did very well. And it was a robust internship. It was a unionized station at the time.
Yeah.
But because I was an intern, I was allowed to spend a lot of time learning camera operation, things
Hmm.
that I had already done in school, and also spend time in the newsroom. And I remember when I was getting ready to graduate, I had spoke to the news director at the time, Stuart Dan, and I said, "Well, I want I want to get a job in broadcasting."
Yeah.
And Stuart said, "Okay, well, I think that's good." He says, "Well, you need to try Elmira." And then I said, "What?"
Yeah, they
And
always sending you somewhere else out of Buff.
always, always. But in reality, it made sense because Buffalo at the time was a top 30 market in the country. People sought, when you look at Buffalo's broadcasting legends around the country, you would be amazed in terms of people that we were born in Buffalo or got their start in Buffalo. And so Buffalo was top 30. And so, he wasn't being facetious, But he was just said that, usually when you're just out of college, you got to kind of cut your teeth in other markets before you move on.
That
And
is true.
so
That is true.
rather than take that route with regard to journalism, I decided that they had an opportunity for a camera person, a production assistant, it was called.
Mhm.
And I said, well, if I'm in there, that can offer me the opportunity to at least try to see what it's like maybe working with the newsroom. And so since I was behind the camera during the newscast, I would work 40 hours a week. And then on weekends, I would actually go out with the news crews and see how they captured news and how they reported the news. And that's where Larry and Willie were instrumental in helping me further my interest in terms of broadcast journalists. And then when an opening came for an entry-level reporter's position, I applied. I had built a reel at the time, and lo and behold, they said, "We know Darryl,"
Yeah.
and I was doing some public affairs substitute anchoring
Mhm.
with Beverly Armstrong.
Yes, yes,
And so that, and Beverly was beautiful friend, God rest her soul, beautiful
yes.
friend.
Absolutely.
And so she said, Darryl, you need to try this out. And there was a much greater emphasis on diversity than what currently exists now to a certain extent. And so lo and behold, I landed, started anchoring, reporting, then from reporter moved into substitute anchoring. And they
Okay.
had a major uh, firing. And I was able to survive that firing that we had back in, I believe it was about 86.
Okay.
And for some reason, I wasn't one of them. And I said, whoa, maybe because you're not paying me any money, I can make more working at
Yeah.
Ford. Maybe that's why they kept me on.
Now, how long were you with Channel 2? From when to when?
I think from 83
Hmm.
until 87.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but on air, probably 2 years, 2 to 3 years.
Okay. All right. Now, I've mentioned this to many of the people that I've had on, and I always make it a point to mention this, that even as I was growing up and back in the
Hmm.
day when we were watching the news, and anytime go to any black household, anytime a black face came across the
Yes.
the television screen in my home, in my grandparents' home, everything in the house stopped to see who was on and what they any of you were all going to see who you were and what you had to say.
Yeah. It's a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yes.
And the fact that there was such a scarcity of many black voices, whether it was Bob Gist and
Yeah.
people, Stan Coleman,
Mhm.
uh, we reveled in the fact that they were on the air and that a city that was at that time at least a third black was starting to receive the representation that it deserved among the media ranks.
Yeah. Are there any when you were on the air when you were reporting? Are there any stories that are memorable to you that stood out to you that you did within the city or
Well,
even the community?
that's the beauty in terms of covering hard news. Violence wasn't as bad as what we experience now. We didn't report of daily shootings and things of that. I'm just being honest. Always
Yeah.
had fires. In
Right.
fact, I can remember I had the chance to two times where some of my reporting made national coverage. One was the horrific fire that they had. I believe it was either on Williams or Genesee of this historic church, and it had a wonderful steeple.
Mhm.
And several firefighters were killed battling the blaze. And
Yeah.
I remember covering that, and that made national coverage. And then another time, I remember when the Wayne Williams or the
Yes.
Atlanta killings were going on. and they finally found the suspect. And Mayor Maynard Jackson happened to be in Buffalo at the time, so I had to find him
Wow. Wow.
and
Okay.
to go speak to him about that.
Interesting.
And then in terms of building relationships with the community, since I did some community affairs work plus doing my reporting work, I had the opportunity, and I was extremely humbled by this. But Buffalo has one of the largest Polish populations
Right.
in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Brian Rusk, I believe it was, and he was very, very pleased with my coverage of whether it was Dingus Day or matters that related to the Polish community. And everybody was enthralled about the fact that Cardinal Wojtyła had became Pope John Paul II. And they were planning a trip to the Vatican to meet with him. And they said, Darryl, if you would like to come with us, we would love to have you with us. Really? And that was just a fantastic invitation. I never got the chance to go because they sent our Rich Kellman at the time to go, and maybe one other reporter. I was the lowest on the totem pole.
Yeah.
But the mere fact that I received that invitation, I think, is indicative of being yourself and trying to be true and trying to be honest and trying to be fair, that people in turn will acknowledge that and reward you for that because of trust that is built.
You know, thinking back to that time, and you're looking at some of the coverage that I've done here on the Buffalo History Channel, we've talked to like Les Trent and Sandy White and many others. And,
Sandy's a friend.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, Les.
And, yes. And I always ask, because we also had the John Smith and the Buffalo Black Media Coalition. They were working to integrate some of the TV stations. What were some of the struggles back then that you all had to face and rise above, and how did that bring many of you together back then?
I think that it was the reality of the 1.2 what I call mentality.
Right. In
terms, okay, you got one black anchor, one black reporter, one black female reporter, black male and female reporter. And that pretty much, showed your commitment to diversity. And so many times you had to look at the ancillary avenues of communication. You had the Buffalo Criterion, you had Sister
Alnisa. Alnisa Barbara Banks,
exactly.
Challenger.
In terms of the Challenger. And I believe there was the Criterion, the Challenger, and there was another one too.
Fine print, the Fine Print News.
Fine Print News, yeah. So you had all of these alternative news sources that had credible journalists.
Yeah.
So we were getting our stories told, and then once again, just hearkening back to the fact that Buffalo was a thriving black population. It is currently still the second largest city in New York State. But the reality is that from a consensus perspective, it's been a major population exodus, and that has caused it to go down, especially in terms of broadcasting.
Yeah.
What used to be a top 30 market, top 30 is now maybe 70 or even less than that. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at the latest national rankings. So we fought to increase the ranks of diversity, and also there was an internal, I believe, non-spoken reality that each one teach one, as opposed to crabs being in a barrel, trying to say, well, you're getting over, so I got to bring you down. No, I'm going to show you how to be better.
Right. Okay, so what after channel 2, where did it take you next? I know did the Ebony Jet Showcase come after that?
Yeah, that was an interesting story there, and it related to channel 2, in fact.
Okay.
So the national sales director for Ebony Jet Showcase was in town, and he was selling the show in terms of the syndication rights to, I believe, it may have been Tom Cochran. Maybe you were speaking to Tom Cochran.
Yes. Yeah, I remember. I remember Tom Cochran. I met him when I was a 16-year-old and
Tom
wasn't
is
sure. I
phenomenal.
sat in his office.
Tom was a phenomenal broadcast professional on the sales side. And Tom was a mentor to me also. And so he saw they had all of the pictures of the broadcast team in the lobby of Channel 2. And I had this big picture of me, smiling 20-something-year-old kid,
Mm-hmm.
And my good friend Ozzy Bruno, who was the national sales director for Ebony Jet Showcase, he asked the receptionist, he said, well, whose picture is that? Who's that? He said, oh, that's Darryl Dennard. He's a reporter and he sometimes anchors for us. He said, I need to get in contact with him. So lo and behold, I received, I think, a phone call or letter. Hey, we're considering you as, a position as co-host of the Ebony. I had never even seen the show. So I didn't know what the show was about. Right. I knew that Greg Gumbel was hosting it. And so I said, okay. And I guess I may put together a reel, probably ask Larry or Willie to help me put together a quick reel. And I sent it to them. And they said, well, we'd like to fly you down to Chicago. And so I went down to Chicago. I met with Mr. John H. Johnson and his daughter, Linda Johnson Rice. Mm-hmm. And I guess, Mr. Johnson spoke to me, and I believe he liked what he saw. And then he offered me the job right then and there. Now, I'm still in my 20s, man, and I got my wife and 4-year-old. Well, how old was she? About 5 or 6 years old at the time. Mm-hmm. Daughter at the house. And I said, well, Mr. Johnson, first time in Chicago. And I said, well, Mr. Johnson, he offered me the job on the spot. I said, Mr. Johnson, well, can I get time to think about it? Can I go home and think about it? And in his characteristic John H. Johnson way, he said, what do you have to think about leaving Buffalo for? You want the job? I said, yes, sir, I do. He says, okay, then get out of here.
I'm giving you the chance of a lifetime, man. Come on.
And he did provide me with that. I've had the opportunity to interview some of and it's easy to get all the pictures of the various people that I interviewed, from Sammy Davis Jr. to Michael Jackson, Oprah Winfrey, Bill Cosby, the list goes on, Tina Turner. And sometimes I even forget sometimes in terms of just how LL Cool J, Guy, Salt and Pepper, Teddy Riley, Marlon Jackson, Janet Jackson, Anita Baker. It afforded me that great opportunity to do that. Maya Angelou, Oprah, as I mentioned. So,
yeah, I can remember that show. I knew about it just by picking up in Jet magazine, and after looking at the Jet Beauty of the Week, I flipped through the pages and see the Ebony Jet Showcase.
I got a little bit of trivia for you there.
And see you there.
One of the main photographers for the Beauty of the Week was a very, very special individual. Mm-hmm. And that individual was, in fact, Lamont McLemore of The Fifth Dimensions.
Yep. I am familiar.
Here he is, singing and telling you about the age of Aquarius, and he's shooting the Beauty of the Week every week.
That was one of Mom and Dad's favorite groups back in the day. I used to hear that record playing in the house all the time.
There you go.
How long were you doing the Ebony Jet Showcase for?
I did the Ebony Jet Showcase for 5 years.
Hmm.
And then they decided to change direction. And I kind of, I was in Chicago at the time. My daughter was attending school. Our son was about 2 or 3 years old. And, uh, and then I landed a job dealing with in terms of academia, because even when I was in Chicago, in Buffalo, I
Hmm.
also had a chance to teach. I was also an adjunct professor or
Okay.
adjunct lecturer over at Buffalo State. And
Okay.
so some opportunities presented themselves with the city colleges of Chicago. And I started there in the theater and broadcasting departments at one of the city colleges of Chicago, Kennedy King College. And then I was elevated to the executive director of the programs. And then also at that time, I ended up getting a job anchoring with Fox News. We launched our program, Good Day Chicago. And so I anchored that for about a year and a half. And then from there, I landed a job with the nationally syndicated television show called Minority Business Report that I
Okay.
first just
Yeah.
co-hosted. And then I was single host and producer of that show.
Okay.
And that show morphed into the Black Enterprise Report. So my stay in Chicago, and then at the same time, concomitant with me working with the Minority Business Report, I also was doing news on a fill-in basis
Hmm.
for iHeartRadio.
Okay.
And I did news for V103, one of the top rated radio stations in Chicagoland. And I've been doing that part-time for 20, 21 years. And I have a show that I do every Sunday called Chicago Speaks. You can pick it up at v103.com, 9 a.m. I'm sorry, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m.
Okay.
Every Sunday morning. And we cover all of the hot button issues that occur during the week, as well as things that are being done in the community to strengthen the community. So, and then I have my own production company that I've had now for almost 30 years, where I do documentaries and corporate as well as community-based organization, videos and video production.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of how I've had to continue my career, just doing. I mean, I
Mhm.
do other. I have a whole other career with the USPS right now, but I still
Okay.
stay in the game with TV and with radio and with my own production company. And this is a little arm of it.
You have to be what I call not only able to have multiple hats or wear
Yes.
multiple hats, but I
Yes.
also believe in the ability of being culturally ambidextrous. Some
Absolutely.
people refer to it as code switching and stuff like that, but I'm a man of humble means.
Yeah.
The first one to graduate from college in my entire extended family. And now I can proudly say that, I've had two of my children are exceptional college graduates that are doing well in terms of their walks in life. And I'm blessed with beautiful grandchildren that are straight A students.
Absolutely,
And
man.
they almost, well, she'll be 2 years old in March. She'll be 2 years old. No, in February, at the end of February, who
Yeah.
she saw me and we were talking together on on a Zoom call, a video call, and she's
Hmm.
just like loves it. If somebody else tries to butt in, she butts in. Granddad, granddad, granddad. What else? So I am an extremely blessed man
Yeah.
and still
Yeah.
married to a woman that I met in Buffalo.
Okay.
So yeah,
So do they want to get into the broadcast field?
you know what? They play. I've had them on the radio and stuff like that, but
Okay.
they're so from basketball to dance to all other kind of things. The attention span doesn't last long, nor their
Yeah.
so you just
Okay.
have to be able to change with their various desires. And my granddaughter straight A's, and so from being a fashionista to chipping me out of my money because she was
Oh,
doing a bracelet
of
business that
course.
I
Okay.
did in, but it didn't pan out.
Mm. Okay. So throughout your years, back during your years of working in newsrooms, what would you say are the differences between then and what you see going on out here today in the industry?
Well, I think that, the thing that I dislike is that social media has given voice to people that are not deserving of voice. And it has also, in that sense, many people are allowed to spew lies and disinformation and misinformation without it being checked.
Yeah.
And so people have been totally propagandized and believing things that just are ultimate lies.
Yeah.
And nobody suffers repercussions for it.
That's true.
Nobody suffers repercussions. And so somebody can come up, and it's very Orwellian. And I encourage people always to read George Orwell's 1984.
Yep. 84. Yep.
But I, I think that there is the problem of social media. And then there's the problem of people having false senses of entitlement, where they think things are beneath them. I used to shine shoes. Doesn't get too much lower than that. But I didn't feel as though I was a second-class citizen.
Right.
I was making money. I was working. And so nowadays, unfortunately, people that sometimes don't have requisite skills feel as though a 16-hour a week job, maybe at McDonald's where there is room for advancement, is beneath them, or I don't want to work weekends.
Right. I mean,
So I encourage, and I'm a born again Christian, and I've spent the majority of my life being a mentor and involved in serious mentor programs that I've been doing nonstop for over 30 years. So, I can't complain about something if I'm not trying to offer a positive alternative.
Yeah, believe me, I've encountered that over the last few years with the whole social media thing and people getting into it, and not realizing how
discussion
they.
is healthy, but
Yeah.
how can we discuss something? I'm gonna be very honest here, Doug. How can we discuss something if you're saying that something that's a fact is not a fact?
Right.
There is no connection to a debate. You have a Speaker of the House right now that is denying that Biden won. Biden won the election, not only the Electoral College by the same exact amount that Trump won, but also still had more popular votes. I was just with President Obama at his democracy forum this past Friday. And there's a major assault on democracy. And it's time for people to wake up.
Yeah. That is true.
So, as I get older, man, it's like, it's like I don't have time for it.
I understand.
I don't have time for people that want to believe a lie.
Right. Yeah,
They want to believe a lie. If we can't agree on facts, facts are exactly what the name implies. It's a factual, or it's a true event that occurred.
Yeah.
And if you're telling me that there are alternative facts, where you coming from, man?
Yeah. When more and more people got access to this whole medium, when back in the day it used to be almost like a privilege to even get accepted into it.
The main reason why is because, unfortunately, things like this have gone unchecked. Right. And you got to realize, when I was a young man, or a young journalist, before my story made the air, it was checked by the producer and sometimes by the editor, the executive producer, and sometimes by the news director for veracity.
Yep.
Especially if you wrote the news.
Right.
It was a whole chain of command that story had to go through in order for it to be published.
Yep.
And now you have major news channels that just promulgate lies and go unchecked.
Yep.
You know, when they were seeking a means of bringing together the country of South Africa, they had to have councils. And think of the name of that council that they had. It was called Truth and Reconciliation. There can be no reconciliation if we disagree on the truth.
Was there anything else you'd like to share about your career, Darryl?
Mayor Byron Brown's one of my closest friends.
Okay.
The people that I love in Buffalo. If you want to find the best steak sandwich that is similar to Scotty's, check out the spot right next to Pilgrim Baptist. I think it's Pilgrim, Mount Pilgrim. I think it is. It's right there on Fillmore.
Okay.
Can't think of the name of it, but it's a little shack right across from the Arab store there.
Yep, I know which one. I can't place the name, but I know which one you're talking
about.
Yeah,
man, brother, he does. You know, it's the closest thing to Scotty's.
Okay.
And you know, so you have legacies in Buffalo, and you covered this, Doug.
Yes.
In terms of John Young, I remember going to Central Park Plaza when John Young decided to diversify from chicken, and he was selling like 25-cent or 15-cent hamburgers, and they were greasy hamburgers, but they were cheap.
Yeah.
And you go in there inside of the Central Park Plaza, it's the loss in terms of Buffalo. Buffalo is a great city, and there are so many areas that are being redeveloped. I only encourage those who have homes in these areas that are now being subjected to gentrification, don't sell your home. Keep your property.
Yes.
Keep your property. Those brownstones that were in the that were in the fruit belt and places like that, you can't find houses like that anymore. And so I would love to see Buffalo thriving the way Genesee and Fillmore and Ferry and all those streets used to be. And, you know,
I would too.
We just have to see Buffalo strong.
Absolutely.
Buffalo strong, and also try to secure succession for our legacy institutions. I think about the tragedy that happened at Tops, but also I'm reminded of Gigi's, how every Saturday, me and the mayor and our crew would go out, play basketball. We were in our 20s, maybe early 30s at the time. We played basketball, and then we all would catch lunch at Gigi's.
Yeah. Even when I'm in Buffalo, I miss them. Miss them days. Always going to Gigi's or Maddie's or whatever.
So,
well, all right, Darryl. It has been an honor to have had.
And also, I just have to give a shout out to my religious family there.
Yes,
at Bethesda Full Gospel. That's where I came to know the Lord, and there in Holy Temple that doesn't even exist anymore, but that is one of the major reasons for my existence, raison d'etre, what the French call. And without faith, I'm nothing. And so it's the faith that allows me to speak to you right now, that's kept me all of this time, and still giving me a desire to go on.
Absolutely, Darryl. Well, it has been an honor to have you on the Buffalo History Channel as part of the Soul of Buffalo TV series.
Well, you got a lot of soul because you keep it moving.
Hey, man, I try. I got the best examples to go to work off. Right?
Sounds good, my brother.
All right,
you take care and keep doing what you're doing. Okay.
Absolutely, brother.